All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Just give me a quick second here. I'm going to get myself set up. All right. So as Kim introduced, I am the Revitalization Coordinator at RDN. So today I'm going to talk about how we can look at rural revitalization in communities and how to look at it in a holistic way so we can really benefit rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. So before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the many First Nations and Inuit peoples across Turtle Island. As an organization, we acknowledge that we're all treaty people. This means we have a responsibility to affirm our commitment and responsibility to improve relations between nations and to improve our understanding of the vast differences between the many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island and their own unique cultures. We recognize our role on this land in advocating for Indigenous communities for better funding and opportunities with programs. We're committed to connecting our programming to the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Girls and Women's Report, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as viewpoints for our reconciliation journey. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a background on the Rural Development Network. We are a nonprofit organization. We do work across rural Canada. We really focus on rural sustainability, creating that tangible community impact, and ensuring that we're building capacity in the rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. So we understand that rural communities have unique needs, challenges, and opportunities. And many existing programs are created for urban centers and they don't serve our rural areas. And because of the different realities with social and economic structures in rural areas and infrastructure that may not exist or does exist, it's just different in smaller communities. So here's some key ways that RDN is supporting rural Canada. We're creating innovative tools and resources, including guides, toolkits, and training that can be created in partnership with the communities. So we always do things in partnership with them and designed specifically for them. We provide expertise and boost capacity in communities so they can implement their own projects. And we advocate on behalf of these communities to ensure they have the resources and information they need. And we can do that through events and networks. We also support communities in accessing funding, which we know is one of the biggest barriers. And as a nonprofit, we do operate on a cost recovery basis. And I'd just like to let people know that we do not receive any core funding from government or other sources. So as mentioned earlier, our initiatives and services evolve over time in responding to community needs and priorities. So here's some of the current services that we have. Includes homelessness estimations, rural immigration training, Indigenous data collection, and housing needs and demands assessments. So the next thing I like to talk about is our three-legged stool analogy. And this is to give you some context on rural revitalization and the work that RDN is doing. So we all know that things in our community are interconnected. And so we like to look at it as a three-legged stool where one leg is your social issues in your community, your social environment. Second one is your economic well-being. And third is the environment with which you live. So we all know that if we don't take care of one of these legs, of course, we're going to have it lopsided and it's not going to be functioning properly. So I like to give this example that if the local economy is doing well, we need more workers. Workers often come with families, and all of whom need access to public and private services. So they'll need schools, daycares, professional services, restaurants, and that further improves the economy. And then we, of course, need more workers, and now the cycle continues. But of course, we also have to ensure that everybody has a safe and affordable place to live, since the environment affects everything. So this is what we've been doing a lot of work on, is in terms of how do we address these social issues, ensure the economies in local and rural communities thrive, so that they can see the benefit that everybody has a place that they want to call home. And we've listened to communities across Canada, and the Rural Development Network has developed the Rural Revitalization Initiative in response to what we're hearing. We're hearing the communities want to look at things in a holistic approach and make sure that everything is interconnected but addressed and prioritized based on what's needed in the community, not just the current project or flavor of the month that's out in the current trends or current grant funding. So we're really working with communities to look at that holistic approach, because we realize that when somebody really enjoys their community and where they live, they're not just going to be your resident, but they're also going to be your advocate. All right, so I like to do a little bit of an icebreaker and lighten the load a little and do a small quiz. So this just gives you a chance to test your knowledge, see what you think on some of these questions. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. They'll be true and false. So since we're in a webinar format, I'll just give you a minute to think about your response, and then you can see what the answers are and see if that's different than what you thought, or if you learned something new, or if you already knew it already. So first one up is the first 2 questions. So first, true or false? Affordable housing developments reduce crime and increase housing evaluations. Second question, true or false? In 2022, immigration accounted for 75% of population growth in Canada and 100% of Canada's labor force growth. I'll give you just a minute. All right, let's see what the answers are. So the answers are true. So on the first one, there was a study done in Orange County where they demonstrated that when you do affordable housing development, it actually decreases violent crime. So that's robbery and assault. And it actually increases everybody's home on an average of $16,000 per home. So this really demonstrates that the belief that affordable housing is detrimental to your community is false. And it shows that it actually brings stability and security to your region. And it's a really large part of a health and safety plan for a community. It creates economic investment in your community, creates new taxpayers, so municipalities have consistent tax streams and can do long-term planning. So affordable housing really benefits everybody in the community. So the second one is true as well. So in 2022, immigration accounted for 75% of population growth in Canada and 100% of Canada's labor force growth. So what this really identifies is that as we have people in our communities retiring, yes, we do have youth that are helping to take on some of those positions, but what we're seeing is the overall workforce isn't growing. Where we're seeing the biggest growth in that is in immigration. So this is definitely something that all communities have to be looking at. And so we will talk later about, how we look at retaining and attracting newcomers so that they'll want to come to your community and stay and contribute to the workforce. All right, the next set of questions. So, true or false? The main reason a newcomer will remain in your community is language assistance. Fourth question, true or false? If a homeless person receives cash aid, they will spend it on drugs and alcohol, not on housing and essentials. All right, so here's the answers. They're actually both false. So the main reason a newcomer will stay in your community is a feeling of connectedness and belonging. And I know this is a concern in many rural communities because they bring the newcomers in and then they're not able to get a foothold and truly feel like they belong. And then they feel like they lose them to more urban centers. So it's important to look at how to make a newcomer feel welcome. Things as simple as maybe a work buddy at work, or hosting potluck dinners where people can get together and meet people, and their family can also meet and make connections, help with finding groceries and culturally appropriate foods for them, as well as just help with transportation. That's a big barrier when they come to a new community, especially in rural areas. So on the next question, it's false as well. So there was a study done by UBC in BC, and it followed 50 unhoused individuals after receiving $7,500 in cash aid. They spent the funds on housing, clothing, food, and transit. Drugs and alcohol use was monitored, but it was no different between the unhoused group that received the cash aid versus the unhoused individuals who didn't receive aid and acted as the control group. Another important item to note is that the cash aid recipients spent almost 100 fewer days homeless over the course of the year. So that's quite something to think of, how that $7,500 in cash aid really helped those individuals. So next I'm going to talk about Sustainable Housing Initiative. So RDN recognizes all these social issues exist. So how are we going about trying to do something about it? And one way is with our SHI initiative. This was established in 2015 to really create a model to develop sustainable housing in rural communities. So we're really trying to respond to the national housing crisis by creating and redefining how communities and all levels of government can think about the housing spectrum. So I'm going to show you that spectrum. Oh, sorry, next here. Yeah, I'll show you that spectrum. And I just want to talk about this for a minute. So you'll see it goes everywhere from homelessness and emergency shelter up to, home ownership. But what I like to point out is, different things happen in our lives, life events, such as a potential divorce, you may be injured or have a really severe illness or suffer a job loss. And those type of events can quickly move you among the spectrum. And so you may have been in an affordable rental, but something like that can really take you back to where you're now needing emergency shelter or you're really struggling to pay that rent. So we have to keep in mind that homelessness is not based on income alone, that other things in our lives do factor where we end up on the spectrum. And all of us have been in different spots in this spectrum throughout our lives. And then there's some of us who've been lucky not to have some of these severe life events that changes where we're at. All right, so I know there's some people in SouthGrow, you guys have been very, very proactive on this housing front. This is something you guys are doing nonstop in your communities, looking at it, determining what to do. As some of you know, and others may not, we do the housing needs and demands assessments. So we will really look at, the demographics in your community and the demand for the economy of housing. Then we'll actually look at your inventory. What have you got? What do you need? And do an analysis to really show you where those gaps are. But the one thing that differentiates us is we really encourage that community and supplementary engagement in doing those housing demands and needs assessments, because it really gives you that extra holistic view of what's going on in your community with housing. One of the barriers we keep running into is StatsCan will often lump rural communities data into a bigger group, and that doesn't really do much benefit for the real small rural communities because they want to see where those numbers lie. So something like community engagement can truly get that holistic picture, so you can see, is there additional gaps or people willing to fill those gaps to really help you in determining how you want to go forward. Another thing that I will mention is we've seen a real uptake in using AI for doing these needs assessments, and then we're seeing that the context isn't there. It's really simple to try to get the numbers, but then we're not seeing the context, and then people are really feeling these assessments aren't serving them as well as they could. So that's something that I do like to mention as you're looking at this. So once you've had that housing needs and demands assessment done, we're also here to help out with developing the strategy. So how do you go forward with that? What does it look like in your community? There is no one size fits all to this with rural communities. You really have to determine what works for your community and how you can take steps to making it happen. So that's something that we can help out with as well. So a project I like to highlight is RDN is involved in the Enabling Housing Choice Project. So this project is really trying to help us understand barriers to housing development. We're trying to guide the communities on how to improve their policies to really help with the housing choice. And then in the end, we will be developing a guidebook that we will be sharing. My understanding is this will be done in 2024. So that's something we can be sure to share with SouthGrow once we have that toolkit available. So we are working with 6 different communities. We've just wrapped up our projects with Bow Island and Airdrie. So we're just finishing up with the other communities that we have. So we do appreciate their partnership on that. So from the project, we've seen some very specific housing development barriers that have come up, and these are the ones listed here. So lack of local housing statistics and market indicators, attracting developers and investors, upfront costs for housing construction, and then development approval processes. But I'm preaching to the choir because I'm sure you guys have seen this every day in what you do. So next is I just wanted to give you some examples of what you could potentially do in your communities to kind of help with these barriers. So here are some policy incentive examples and some advocacy examples, because these can really try to offset the barriers. So I give two examples here. Town of Okotoks, they have a program where they provide financial assistance for secondary suites or accessory dwelling suites, but they have to meet the safety codes, of course. And then Town of Mayor Thorpe, they have a rebate structure for municipal tax incentives that encourages like new housing, commercial industrial development. So it's really to try to help stimulate their economy over a 3-year period. So not saying that these policies will all be applicable to you, it's just to give you some thought starters. And as well, there is advocacy examples. So some of what we are hearing is that the new home warranty program, even though that was updated back in December of 2022, it has effectively taken many small home builders out of the construction sector. And that is a bit daunting, especially for our really small, rural, remote communities, because, you know, if a builder's only building 5 homes a year, that may not seem very large in the large scheme of things, but to a small community, that could mean an extra 5 homes a year. So that is something that definitely should be looked at. And so there's just advocacy to review those policies. In regards to the building code, oh, I'm sorry. I realized I have all on the wrong slide. Sorry, that was me. In regards to the building code, we've been told by stakeholders that the cost to meet the building code requirements on secondary suites is making them not necessarily cost effective to build. So this might be another avenue where that needs to be looked at and advocated on. And another thing that we like to mention is advocacy only works if the communities collaborate together, and whether it's with builder associations, trades associations, or with each other, that's really how you're going to have that voice. All right, so I'd already skipped to this slide, but it's just to let you guys know that we do have a step-by-step guide to develop affordable housing. In order to get this guide, it is free. You can just go to the Rural Development Network, Rural Development Network website, and under resources, you'll see it listed under our SHI. So feel free to take a look at that and download that and see if that information can help you. We did develop this toolkit through a national advisory committee, and the funding support was from FCM and CMHC. So we did have lots of different people helping with this process, everything from construction all the way down to energy efficiency. So we looked at the different things. So another thing that I really like to let everybody know about is we've developed an affordable housing development course, and it's going to be available online through a learning management system platform, and it's going to be similar to like universities and colleges. So learners can be placed into quarterly cohorts, and the cohorts will be based on people in similar markets. And then this will allow people to interact, share their ideas on a discussion forum, and then they can truly understand the process and help them try to find the funding that they need in order to move forward and educate, people on their needs in their community. So I'm just gonna move forward to the next slide, and I wanted to show you a short video that's going to show you a little bit more about this platform.
So what is the Sustainable Housing Initiative, or the SHI? Well, the SHI is an arm of the Rural Development Network. We work to build capacity in Canada's affordable housing sector. Our team is composed of experts from rural, remote, and urban Canada. The intent of this course is to equip participants with the ability to independently navigate affordable housing projects through pre-development. So what makes housing affordable? Well, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, commonly referred to as the CMHC, suggests that households who spend more than 30% of their gross income on shelter live in unaffordable housing. This means that affordable housing is when a household spends less than 30% of their gross income on housing. As there are many forms of affordable housing, this course has chosen to focus on what we know best, rental affordable housing, meaning that a household's rent must be below 30% of their gross income. To give you an idea, the 2021 census determined that a third of renters live in unaffordable housing. 1/3 of renters in Canada are paying over 30% of their gross income on housing costs. So now we'll talk about the housing continuum. So the housing continuum is the spectrum of housing that ranges from the provision of emergency housing all the way up to market home ownership. Each step of the continuum services a particular need. This course will primarily focus on affordable housing, while touching on community, supportive, transitional, and emergency shelter housing. From 2011 to 2021, Canada saw a growth rate of 21.5% in renter households. While renting becomes more popular, it's also become more expensive. That's why the SHI believes that the creation and preservation of affordable housing is essential to our work in addressing and finding solutions to Canada's housing crisis. So what is the sustainable?
All right, so next I want to talk about another way that we're helping communities is in regards to homelessness and doing a homelessness and service needs estimation. This is really to help communities understand what housing insecurity looks like in their community and what services they need to address it. So housing insecurity by national definitions is not just people living on the streets or in tents. It includes people who couch surf, stay with relatives, just change from house to house. They may have shelter, but they don't have affordable or sufficient heat. They may be sleeping in their vehicle or an abandoned building, or they may be living in a domestic violence situation. So RDN recently completed a province-wide homelessness and service estimation for just rural communities in Alberta. And there was some surprising findings that I'm going to share with you here in a moment. So RDN worked with 21 groups that represented 45 rural, remote, and Indigenous communities this past spring. And it's worthwhile to note that only one on-reserve Indigenous community participated in the survey. The survey was administered through local service agencies, and from this survey, it was determined that 2,429 individuals were housing insecure. When you add in their dependents and spouses and other adults living, spouses and other adults living in their homes, there was 7,320 community members experiencing housing insecurity. So the first finding that I like to talk about is in regards to employment. So you'll see here that we found that 69% of people who are housing insecure were employed. And that also include part-time employment as well. Now I want to give you a reference on this. 70% of housing insecure respondents that responded to this survey were also employed. So basically the same employment rate, whether they were housing insecure or housing secure. So the next finding that was very interesting is seeing that the top 3 reasons for housing insecurity, and they all were tied to financial. So low wages was one. Second one was the inability to afford rent or their mortgage payment. And the third one was increasing rent costs. So another finding that I found really interesting was in regards to missing amenities. The one that really stood out is that 23% said that they had missing or insufficient affordable heat. So this is almost 1/4 of people who are housing insecure, which is a little hard to believe as we're into the winter season and we will eventually get those -20 nights. That's something to be thinking about, that there's people who don't have that amenity. And even things like basic fire protection was missing for 18%. So this is all I'm going to share from those findings for that homelessness estimation for rural Alberta. But if you would like any more additional information on it or more of the results, please feel free to contact me and I will make sure you get that information. So I just wanted to highlight then what we're doing in regards to the homelessness space. We do have a toolkit that you can go to the RDN website and you can download to really get a handle on how you got to look at that estimation process. As well, we're always available to help communities do that if that's something that they want one-on-one help with. And then also just to let the group know that we are also responsible for the federal Reaching Home funding, which is going out to rural communities. So this funding then is for any community outside of the 7 major cities in Alberta. And it also includes First Nations, Métis settlements, and Métis nations. So over the past few years, the project has funded over 100 projects. So this is something that we're anticipating will happen again in the new year. So that is something to keep in mind, that if you have a need for your community. All right, next I'd like to talk about rural immigration. So this is another way that we're trying to help rural communities, is in how do they attract and retain newcomers to their community. So one thing that has just come out in November, so this is brand new, and our rural immigration team has worked really hard on this, and I'm really proud of the work they've done. This is a really easy to follow toolkit. It's both visual and has text, and it really can help communities and employers understand how they can really help and retain newcomers that are in their workforce. So there is training topics included, such as their needs of newcomers in rural communities, how to do anti-discrimination and barriers to access, as well as intercultural competency, looking at power dynamics, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace, as well as having welcoming, inclusive communities and how to go about that. So if you'd like a copy of this, you can just go to our website under resources, and then you'll see this ready toolkit there, and feel free to download your free copy, and feel free to share it with whoever in your community may benefit, whether it be employers or even other rural municipalities. All right, I also want to let you know that our rural immigration team is working on another project called Ready to Work. And so we're really focusing on that rural employers' awareness on diversity inclusion, but this also has a work integrated learning component. So the project is going to really focus on helping employers with that equity, diversity, inclusion training, how to create a welcome environment, give access to a pool of candidates that they could support in addressing their workforce shortages, and it'll increase the capacity of employers to meet their workforce goals and by creating meaningful opportunities. And then the newcomers will also gain that valuable Canadian work experience that they so often need on their resumes. So the immigration team is currently recruiting employers. So if you know somebody in your area that would be interested in Southern Alberta, please let me know, and I'll get you in touch with our program manager, Sohaila. I believe she's even on this call today, and we'll definitely set you up because we're looking at that for January 2024. And just to highlight again that our rural immigration team really is here to support you in any way. We can do customized training for employers or service providers or for municipalities, anything in that equity, diversity, and inclusion space, anti-discrimination, or supporting that cross-cultural awareness. We did recently here in the fall just do a cross-cultural awareness workshop in Claresholm. So I know there are some rural renewal stream communities in the SouthGrow region. So if there's something that you're looking at, or you just want to, bounce an idea off of us, feel free to contact us. We're here to help you, and we'll assist in any way that we can. All right, so now we've talked about social issues and some of what our DN has been doing to try to help communities address those social issues. But now I'd like to talk about the economic piece. So what investment do we see when we look at addressing these social issues? So some of the investment issues that I'd like to discuss today are in terms of how do we realize cash flow, workforce and skills investment, an economic business investment, and then community resiliency and sustainability. So in regards to cash flow investment, for example, with housing, we all know it's important that people have a house that they can afford, but it also allows them then to spend that discretionary income that they have left over in the local economy. And so they might spend it on stuff for their homes or home improvements and repairs. And one thing I do like to point out is we often don't realize, like what we see with that cash aid example earlier, is that when people who are need of having in low income or need of that aid, when they do get that money, they're way more likely to spend it local. They're not the ones that go in the car and may travel to the larger urban centers and go to your big box stores. So it's important to note that they can be a very important aspect of your business economy. So there is this misconception that when people do receive assistance, that they're not going to spend it locally and that they're going to spend it in ways that's not productive for a society. And so here's two studies. One I've already talked about, but there is another one. It was an example that come out of a study in rural remote region of Kenya. And what I thought was it was very surprising, the results. They gave them some cash with no strings attached. What I found was very interesting is the citizens spent that cash on the food and essentials, but with the local businesses. And the effect they saw is for every dollar in cash aid that they received, it turned into $2.60 in economic activity in the area. So almost triple. So that goes to show you how much that can mean to our business economy. And then just reiterating that example from UBC, so it's a more Canadian local example, you can see that when we give cash aid to those that are unhoused, it's that misconception that it's going to be spent on drugs and alcohol isn't true. These are people who have fell into different parts of the housing continuum for different reasons, and they really want to get back on their feet. They just might be struggling. But when they do get this cash, it's interesting to see that they do spend it on the essentials. So we really see there is a cash flow investment when it comes to helping people and ensuring we have that housing. So next is the workforce investment. So next generation of workers, so that's our youth. We really need to see that they have the kind of affordable housing that their family needs, because if they aren't constantly worrying about moving or being evicted, then they're going to be able to work on their workplace skills. They're going to further their education, and then they're more likely to use that skill set in the community. And so we'll also see that when people are housing secure, they will explore their cultural and extracurricular interests and activities. And what we see is threefold with that. They may develop new skills. They may also develop something that turns into a new career, or they might even start a business that could potentially be a new business or even a tourism draw for your area. So it does seem to have a lot of good benefit by really focusing on ensuring that their housing is secure, and also that they have that ability to focus on those things. Now, I also would challenge you that newcomers would be a part of this next generation of workers. Based on that stat I told you earlier in the webinar, they are definitely a part of our labor market, so we should be looking at that as well. And again, discretionary spend, when people have that ability, it creates stability not only for the employees, but the businesses. And it's an important attraction and retention tool. People want a place that they feel they belong, that they can be in a safe, affordable environment. And then they're going to stay. They're going to fill entry positions. They're going to work their way up into management. They're going to do professional development. They're going to stay and grow with your business, but also with your community. So another part that I wanted to talk about was specifically skills investment when we look at welcoming newcomers. So as you know, a lot of what people are looking for is for them to bridge that current skills gap. But we also have to look at that they will provide new skills that we may not have in our community, since they may be more willing to come to those rural communities, especially if they came from a rural community where they originally were from. it'll really allow them to bring that new skill set, and businesses can utilize that to either expand or create new offerings in their business model. Another thing that we're seeing is the highly skilled migrant labor is really bringing innovation and technological progress to communities. So it's important to see that they are bringing those skills. And as well, when we look at the lower skilled migrant labor, they're helping us fill those gaps. And it could be everything from, caregiver care to child care. And these are really important things we need in that community in order for businesses to thrive. All right, next is economic and business investment. And yes, you're going to feel like I'm repeating myself, because what's good for employees is good for business. So again, you're going to see that businesses are going to gain new customers, they're going to get a higher customer spend. When people feel they have a good, affordable place to live, they feel they're part of the community and want to stay. You're also going to see a business expansion and attraction. It's going to foster that, because now we've seen through stats that patent activity increases when migrant labor is in a community. So they really encourage innovation. They really reduce those bottlenecks and shortages that businesses are facing, so they can look at either maintaining their business or expanding it. It enhances your region's competitiveness. If you know that you have a qualified workforce, you're way more likely to come to that region when you know you have what you need for your business. And when those newcomers come to our community, we have to recognize that they bring their connections with them. And that might open up opportunities for foreign investment or even trade diversification. And again, as I said earlier, it's an employee attraction retention tool. People want safe housing, a community they want to live in. And we got to ensure that when we're welcoming newcomers, that they're helping us boost that working age population, which we need. So it's a definitely beneficial relationship. All right, and next is the community resiliency and sustainability. So now I'm going to talk about municipal tax revenue. So when we have that diversity and that housing stability in our area, what you're going to find then is that people are going to be able to afford their taxes. They're going to be in a place where they can pay into that municipal tax stream. And yes, they're paying in at different rates, but it's way more important for the municipality to have that consistency and know that everybody's contributing than to have a disparity where you have a bunch of, let's say, lower income type homes that then are not being able to be looked after. They become distressed or they become abandoned. And we all know as taxpayers that as soon as that happens and it's in arrears, that we pay for that process for that to go through, for the municipality to take care of those properties. So it's really important to realize how important then that having that housing choice, having that housing spectrum really allows everybody to find their place in the community and contribute to it. And I like to mention again on that housing choice model that housing choice affects everybody. We have middle income people, that are struggling to secure that permanent housing based on inventory and on cost. So it's really important to realize that it's not just strictly based on wage, but also in that area, depending on how much wages are, what different industries you have, what's affordable in one community may not be the same as in another. So we really have to understand that affordable housing isn't just one size fits all. It's truly what we talked about earlier in that course. It's about having it be 30% of your income. So we just have to take that into consideration when we're looking at that. All right, and one more piece that I'd like to talk about on the resiliency and sustainability is when we're bringing newcomers in, we have to realize that they're not taking away from us. They're really ensuring that that prosperity is shared among us all. Because when everybody's doing well, that average income for all workers is going to go up. Businesses are doing well, workers are doing well, we all see it. We also have to understand, and you see this every day in your rural communities, we have aging populations. So how do we support them? We need to replace these positions that are being freed up by the retirees. We want to see that there's a workforce there that contribute to the seniors staying in their community or in their homes as long as possible. Aging in place is something that has been discussed quite a bit, especially with the new baby boomer generation that is entering this area. And again, I bring up the importance of people being able to look at their cultural, extracurricular, and recreational interests. You just never know when that will develop a new skill or a new business or a new tourism draw. A couple examples I give is someone who takes a cooking class, decides they like cooking. Maybe now they'll be a chef for a local restaurant. Oh, now maybe I don't just want to work for someone. Maybe now I want to start my own business. Now I have a restaurant business. And that might be a culinary restaurant that actually encourages people to come to your community and is a draw. Likewise, you might have somebody who likes to paint. They may start painting classes. Then they may realize they can open a painting studio. Next thing you know, they're painting murals in your community or being a tourism draw for people to come for a potential bed and breakfast or for a painting class. So we really have to look at how all those things really sustain a community and create that resiliency. So we got to really understand that when those social issues are addressed, they'll have that ability to work on these things that benefit us as well. So I'm coming to a close on my presentation. I do want to let you guys know that next Wednesday in a week, I am doing a Rural Mythbusters webinar. And so feel free to register if you would like to attend. It's really about having a conversation because things are changing for us every day. And it's just good to know where things are at and where those things can turn into opportunities. So this is really to try to give rural communities that opportunity to see where their knowledge lies and where they may be able to see some opportunities for their community. So I just want to take a moment and thank you all for your time today. I know everybody's busy, so thank you for coming today. I will share these slides as well as some of these resource links with SouthGrow, so Kim can share them with you. And we do have some time now. If anybody had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you, Trisha. I don't have any questions in the chat box, but if anybody wants to turn their mic on, get additional clarity on anything that we had seen there was quite a lot of info, so feel free to jump in.
Hi. And that's why I'll give the slides too, because there's some websites there, it's hard to write them all down. So yes, I'll make sure you have all the links.
Hi, this is Carolyn from Cypress County. Fabulous presentation. Hey, Trisha, long time no see.
Yes.
Cypress County will be reaching out because all of the slides that, we're remote, rural, and that sort of thing, and we do have attainable housing stressors. So we will be reaching out, and I think my council would be very, very interested in the presentation and working with you and the Rural Development Network. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Terlyn. And if you need us to present to your council, just let us know and we will do our best to do that.
Fabulous, thank you.
So there is a question in the chat box. Can you talk about what partnering with the RDN to get housing assessments done looks like?
So I am going to say that I don't personally work on these day in, day out. So I'm going to just give some basic notes, but I would definitely refer that to SHI team so that they could give you some more information. But the big thing with us is we're doing this with you, not like just get you a bunch of information and spit it back to you. So when we really engage with who you think we should be talking to in the community, we really look at the numbers and things that you think we should be looking at. Like I said, we've already identified the StatsCan data is not helping us in terms of some of the real smaller communities. So we try to advocate for that because lumping us together isn't necessarily helping a community that might be really trying to move the needle on housing. So we really take that time to work with you, figure out what you have going on currently, what then would be the potential needs. We're of course going to get you that hardcore data that you need. So if you are going to apply for funding, you will have that information you need to show that you do have that need and you should be considered for funding. But yeah, if you wanted more details on that, I would be happy to set you up with our one of our team members.
Yeah, Mike Cutler from Claris Home here. I just want to say thanks, Trisha, and being a community that used it and had the assessment done, it was very valuable. And like you were saying, it wasn't just the information. I mean, you guys met with landowners and prospective processes, and then the feedback and the suggestions you gave us helped us as a council guide our next steps into this housing situation. So it's very valuable and it's been very useful. So thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
And Mike,
thanks. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, the next question is a little bit more specific. So maybe, Mike, you might have a little bit of insight on this, having gone through the program, but how would the housing needs assessment differ from one that may have been provided by ORSC?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank you, Mike, for your comments. I appreciate hearing that we helped your community. In regards to that, I guess what I want to say is, what is ORR? I don't know if I understand what that acronym is. Would that be able to be clarified?
Old Man Regional Services Commission, Old Man River Regional Services Commission.
Okay, I didn't realize that there had been one offered, so I feel like I can't really comment on that one because I didn't realize that you guys had something done there. I guess the only thing I say is that just make sure there is that community engagement piece. As long as that's in your housing assessment, that's what's going to make the difference. And you're going to find then you're going to be able to prioritize and move the needle more because you're actually going to know what's going on. So just make sure, I put a little caveat earlier, but just make sure it isn't stuff pulled off the internet and stuck in a report. Like when you're a real rural and really small remote community, it just might not be applicable. So watch that.
Yeah, and like Trisha said, I'm not too familiar with the ORSC assessment that's been done either. But with this process, I mean, we met with the team 3 times as a council as well. They involved us in every step and gave us that feedback and asked us, you know, what population. I mean, I believe they met with real estate agents, they met with landowners, they met with local housing authorities and everything. And so it was kind of that in-depth, personalized, small community assessment, and it wasn't, you know, like you say, an umbrella approach. It was kind of focused right on our community and our needs. So, and again, I really don't know what the ORSC assessment involves. So.
Excellent, thank you. Approximately how long did the assessment take and how much did it cost?
Is that being asked to a specific community or to me?
I would say probably because it would differ, I would suspect, depending on the size of the communities. But if there was a ballpark for how long approximately it can take, would be helpful.
Well, I think I would feel better if my team spoke to you and gave you a quote. I'm being honest, because it really the size of the community and what you like. We've had different communities come to us with different ideas on what they want with that assessment, based on, let's say, if they're going after a specific fund or whether they need it for a specific thing. So I've seen a lot of variance, and I would not feel proper giving a range till I had you talk to her. Is that for you, Byron? Was that your question?
Yeah, that's for us. Peter was out and stirred the pot at our council meeting last night, so now we're following up. So all good ideas. We just got to get them all going the same direction. So appreciate it. No, thank you.
And so Byron, like I can definitely connect you with one of our team just to have a conversation. Like, don't feel obligated. Like, we're here, we're a nonprofit, we're here to move the needle. So if you just want to have a conversation, see if there's anything we can help with, great. If not, we're just happy to, you know, see if there's just even some insight we can give you.
That's perfect. You bet. I'll follow up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Is there any other questions? I don't have anything in the chat. Hearing none, thank you again to Trisha for presenting us with these really great info and resources, and for all of you folks for showing up today to learn about it. It's always great to get good engagement, and when we host webinars and you show up to them, we like to think that it's relevant. So thank you all for taking time out of your lunch hour to spend with us. And the recording will be up probably within a week or so, and the presentation and resources will be sent out shortly after. So thank you all.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for coming. Appreciated the time. Please feel free to touch base.
Thank you.